Tucker Carlson had Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson on his program the other day. I don't know how sincere Asa Hutchinson is in his beliefs here that it is a horror show for government to get involved in between a doctor and a parents and their kids in terms of what kind of health care they are looking for in terms of dealing with, maybe an idea that they want to transition or they may want to transition later in life. I am old enough to remember when the Republicans had no problem trying to interfere between Terry Schiavo and her husband as he wanted to fulfill her wishes in unplugging her from life support when she became a vegetative state. The Republicans in the Senate, the U.S. Senate, tried to weigh in on this case that was happening in Florida. But here's Asa Hutchinson on Tucker Carlson's program. As you know, Hutchinson's veto of this basically medical care for kids who may or may not be trans was overridden by the Arkansas state legislature. Here is Tucker Carlson.
In the most sensitive issues.
Why are we regulating the behavior of children at all if we're allowing children to decide? And by the way, I read a study today that showed the overwhelming majority of kids who do not take life-altering hormones in the end decide not to, quote, transition to a new sex. So there's a lot going on here.
I just have to say really quickly before, this isn't the kids making the decision. They can't make this decision on their own. They can't go to a doctor on their own and make this choice. The
parents have to sign off.
To sign off on it. So straw man from the beginning, per usual, with Tucker Carlson.
Go ahead.
So I just had to.
By the way, I read a study today that showed the overwhelming majority of kids who do not take life-altering hormones in the end decide not to, quote, transition to a new sex. So there's a lot going on here, but I'm asking as a conservative, you just invoked Ronald Reagan as if he were for chemical castration of children. What other behavior should we not use the power of the state to regulate among kids? Seriously.
Well,
why
you
can't they
debate
have
it
sex
every
at 15?
time. And so, look, Tucker, you want to keep talking or you want me to answer a question? Tucker,
I sincerely want you to answer.
Well, thank you. And so whenever whether it's beer for minors, these are all issues that you have to address the legislature. You make judgment calls on it. But we also try to restrain ourselves as conservatives and say we don't have to be involved in every issue. And if you want to broaden the party, if you want to get back to the principles, then let's at least think through in a reasoned way as to whether this is the right bill to interfere with parents and doctors' decisions on a health care matter, as you pointed out, does not have thorough research in every area. And so I yield to that.
But
whenever you look at this bill, in my veto
yield to the lack of research. Really quick, 10 years ago, if somebody had said, hey, Asa Hutchinson, you're going to be governor of Arkansas, and you're going to veto a bill that would have protected children from chemical castration, what do you think you would have said?
Well, just like I said today, if you're talking about a reassignment surgery, I would have signed that bill in a minute. But whenever you're talking about maybe less than 200 kids in Arkansas that's currently on hormone treatment, and they are immediately cut off without having a grandfather clause in this legislation, I don't think that's treating those kids or their parents or their health care providers fairly or equally.
All right. That's the conservative position. Governor, thanks. I appreciate you coming on.
How smug that is. How smug that is.
Let me just make another point here.
Why did Hutchinson agree to go on to that show if he wanted to actually have a conversation about his decision?
I'm not going to try and get into the mind of that of Asa Hutchinson. I don't want to glorify that guy for doing something that is sort of just basic level humanity as far as I'm concerned in terms of vetoing that. But I just want to add, I haven't looked into that study that Carlson's talking about, and I'm just even if I give him the just give him the presumption that he's reading that study right. Obviously, people who decide against taking hormone therapy will be more likely ultimately to be glad that they didn't take that, right? I mean, just if you are leaning towards, if you are deciding at that time and you do not have a deep, compelling belief that you want to do something and you don't do it, is it any surprise that 5 years later, you're like, I actually made the right decision? I mean, the whole point is, when you have, if a child and their parents decide that they want to take some type of hormone blockers or something to sort of delay their puberty because they have a deep abiding sense that they want to change the way that their gender is manifested, then of course it's more likely that they're making the right decision. I mean, it's just absurd.
I think what he's trying to, the figure, maybe we could listen to that again if there's a chance, but I think he's trying to say 90% of kids that use like basic hormone blocking choose not to go through with gender reassignment surgery, which would, that's what I heard. And I could have misheard it because I don't listen to, whatever facts Tucker Carlson pretends to be espousing, but that also could make sense. I mean, one, the surgery to change your genitalia is. Do you want to play it?
Yeah, play it, Brendan.
We're allowing children to decide. And by the way, I read a study today that showed the overwhelming majority of kids who do not take life-altering hormones in the end decide not to, quote, transition to a new sex.
Pause it.
Okay, so no, you were right. I'm sorry. I misinterpreted it.
The overwhelming majority of children and parents who decide not to take the hormones do not transition. Well, I mean, of course.
Yeah, it's not saying anything at all.
No, of course.
Well, Asa Hutchinson, I would love to understand. I am curious about the decision to veto it, because I didn't even realize this until the story came out yesterday, that Arkansas has a simple majority veto. So it's not 2/3 or anything like that. You have to. Oh,
he can just show. I didn't realize
majority.
that either.
So
yeah.
that's why it was kind of a symbolic move. What does that symbolic move gain him politically?
I think he's probably. I mean, I imagine maybe he's thinking national politics.
Yeah. Brendan writes, amazing how much his tone and delivery carried that whole segment. Exactly. The smugness with which he said, apparently this is the conservative position, and just belittling Hutchinson's view on that point. I don't know.
I mean, it is, look, it is what Tucker's building there.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it is part of what he's building. It is quite obvious. You can just put these pieces together and you can see it. We're going to have this sort of faux populism, and which is going to, but we're going to carry the torch for these completely irrelevant, in terms of the lives of everybody except for those children, issues, frankly. And that's just the way that it works with them.